What up, everybody? We are back. Hopefully, no mic issues this time. What's up, bro? How you doing, Louis?
Hey, what's up, Arnaldo? Hopefully we got that straightened out. Yours was super loud last week and ours was super low. So hopefully we got it right this time.
Absolutely, my friend. So we're coming from a victory, 1-0. Some questions again, even though we won, but it's always good feeling or a great way to correct things when we win. So I want to get your first impressions. What did you think of the lineup? Did you expect Diente to start after all? What did you think of his play?
Yeah, when I saw that later in the week he was still sticking with Diente, I figured he would start him. I didn't like the first half at all. I thought we were sloppy. We kind of played into Xolos' game plan. I think they came in, tried to make it kind of scrappy. Um, they didn't sit as far back as I thought they would, but they still made it difficult for us. And honestly, I feel like Xolos was so depleted, had so many injuries going in, missing several starters that I thought we should have handled the game a lot better. But it's starting to be a trend where we don't score much in the first half. So I was a little disappointed with the performance. Thankfully, we picked it up in the second half. Carioca came in, did his thing. He's turned into a little bit of a point guard, to use a basketball term for us. He knows when to slow the pace down, when to pick up the tempo. So I thought that was a good sub, and it did help us out a bit.
Yeah, man. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know if it was the heat that day. It was really hot in Monterrey. So everybody it seemed like they were just not playing at a high level. The intensity was not there. I think that was one of Bigon's worst games in a while. I've been talking about it, he's been carrying bad form, but it was just, he didn't belong on the field. Devon didn't belong on the field. Like, he had many kid like mistakes on the field. So I think overall the first half just kind of is a representation of what we can be if we're not, have the intensity or are scoring goals on with our chances.
Sadly, it's turned into a trend for us to have really poor starts. I wish we could just blame the hot weather, but honestly, it goes back to last season. If you just look at the games, we haven't had very many scoring opportunities in the first halves. And in the last 10 games, we've scored 6 times. If you don't, that one game where the if you don't take
Atlas.
into account the Atlas game, we've only scored 6 goals in the last 10 games. So that's definitely a concern. It doesn't mean that we've looked bad in every single game. It just means that there's large portions of the game where we're taking time off. We're not attacking. We're just playing to the opponent's level. And so if it doesn't get fixed, we're really playing a soft portion of the schedule right now. So if it doesn't get fixed, once we start playing the tougher opponents, we're going to struggle.
We don't look like the powerful team. And I know we talked about it when we were doing the preview recording or episode for the season. We talked about like the confidence going into the season, and it wasn't really there. With the addition of Loroña, my hope is that we could improve defensively and create that balance. We didn't look bad defensively this past game either, but it was the attack that looked slow and not making passes, or connecting with passes.
I don't want to get too excited about the D just yet, just because we haven't really played any opponents that are going to test us. It turns
Mm-hmm.
out Cruz Azul is not going to be as good as they were a few seasons back. And then Mazatlan, they're struggling. Xolos is struggling. So we'll have to wait and see what the defense really is going to be like once we face a tougher opponent. I think also, like you mentioned, the addition of Loroña is going to help us out a ton.
And one of the things that for me that I took out of this game, and I talked about it prior to it, because I knew it was a make it break or make it for Diente Lopez. I think especially with Jordy Caicedo coming on, Tigres looked really good in the second half with the two defensive mids with Carioca and Pizarro in the middle, and with two wide wingers and two forwards. And Gignac had a lot of movement. Jordi Caicedo was anxious to get the ball. He at times he was a little frustrated and flustered with with the play of his teammates. So I can see that lineup a lot more consistently than including Diente as an option. And that's why I mentioned that if it was not going to be this game where he demonstrated or performed at a high level with some type of a goal, assist, he was going to lose some minutes because he was the second option all last season. And Charlie Gonzalez is beating you in a team where you were the leading
Yeah.
scorer. Something's not right, whether that's with Piojo and the way that he perceives Diente can play, or, as far as what he can contribute to the system. So now I am confident Diente Lopez will no longer be a key piece of Tigres moving forward. He will be a sub, but he might be a regular sub at moving now.
Yeah, you kind of saw it with Jordy Caicedo. I mean, that dude is a beast. He's gonna give defenders fits. He's got a lot of strength, excellent speed. He wants the ball. He's constantly moving, and he wants it. I think he's gonna have to get used to being the second option on the passes. I think he came from a team where he was the first option, and now he's second on the pecking order to Gignac here. So I think he's going to have to get a little used to that, but he's making all the right movements. I saw him moving without the ball. When he had the ball, he's going at defenders. And I'm with you. I think Ghent is going to have a hard time being that second option. Hopefully what we'll see is Gignac and Caicedo starting together in a 4-4-2 type of lineup, and then Diente being able to come in and be the sub for one of those guys so he gets regular minutes. So we'll see what Piojo decides on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, my thing is, even in that moment, I think he picks Cordova over Diente.
I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it.
I mean, he picked him to start the first two games, or, before he got the red card, like it was Cordova. And it's just, there's something about Diente's game that doesn't fit anymore. With Gignac out, him being the lone top option, like it works because Diente is a very talented player, but he's not a winger, and he's not a true attacking, like in the box forward. He's just a guy that can finish around the area, but he's not playing a number 10. He doesn't have the pace to do that and get involved with the game. Great technical ability, but he's a tough player to analyze as to how you can use him in a system. But I think he would be a great second option playing alongside somebody, not behind, because he doesn't have that movement to go back, back and forth. So it's unfortunate, man, because he's got a lot of talent. So, he's becoming, a little bit expendable in my opinion, along with with what's coming with the injury of Florian, man. Like,
the only thing I'll say on that, Arnoldo, with Diente is that his shot might come during CONCACAF. If Gignac can't make those trips to the U.S., that floated, right. The whole COVID thing floated around for a while, a few days ago and this morning. So if he can't make the trips to any of the U.S. MLS games, then that might be the opportunity for Diente to be a starter there. So he might be relegated in the Liga, but in CONCACAF, he has more of a shot. We'll see.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I kind of predict, kind of like similar to what the NBA handles or the MLB, Gignac's just probably going to play the home games, up until I believe the final or the championship will probably be in the States. I don't know how the format's going to be. But I don't foresee that too much of a problem. And especially since we shouldn't be relying on Gignac to be still our sole reason for winning. We should have a team around him that he can still contribute at a high level, which he is, and develop and groom Jordy Caicedo into the competition of this tournament and the domestic league.
Yeah, we definitely have the pieces to be able to battle. I don't see that being a problem at all. If Gignac can't travel, we should be fine.
Anybody else that impressed you? Obviously, Fulgencio had an amazing goal. I think he's had a few good games. Any expectations moving forward with him?
Man, Fulgencio has been surprising me because he took a slump last season, in my opinion, where he wasn't getting very many minutes, and partly because he was partying a lot and just not concentrating in practice, I'm sure. But when he came in this season, I wasn't expecting much, and each game he surprised me. So I think he's onto something. He looks motivated. I think he's going to get another start with Tovan injured. Quiñones is probably going to take the right wing. That's going to leave Fulgencio on the left. So hopefully he keeps it going, man. He's looking great.
And he's Mexican, can contribute to the national team if needed. I think he's a player that you can slide in multiple positions depending on how you play. It's kind of one of those, like, in all of Piojo's team, there's always a young Mexican kid that kind of thrive. and it wasn't necessarily a superstar, but it was definitely a contributor to the teams. And I think that's his role here, which, and he has the upside with his speed and, his ability to come mark down on defense. So I think he's locking in that position at the moment, especially with Florian being injured, as we head probably into 2 to 3 weeks without him.
Yeah. Yeah, that it seems like it's a recurring left groin issue with Jovan, and those injuries tend to pop back. I think Piojo is putting a lot of stress on some of these guys. I don't think he's using a good rotation, and it's still early in the season, so that's got me worried, because what happens when we have more games of a tighter packed schedule? We're going to get more injuries, man. So I think he needs to incorporate more of a rotation there.
Yeah, I feel like he just needs to really strategize as to what each player can contribute on the field for an X amount of time. Diente can still be involved in a 25-30 minute sequence, but he might not be your starter. And like you mentioned, his shot, I mean, he's got one of the best left foots in the league. So I agree with you. I think if he finds a way, especially as we know the topic of conversation with Carioca continues, maybe another game on the bench, and that he comes in and plays that point guard position, like you say, and moves the strings around and orchestrates, I think he's gonna have to find a way to include everybody, like we were promised, and also the goals, because we're not scoring goals like he promised.
Yeah, he keeps repeating that back line, and I don't know why, if it's just stubbornness or if he feels like, well, they won, so let's keep it going. But in part because he's so fixated on that same back four, it's messing up his ability to make the proper moves. He's got pieces to where he can shift the lineup and rotate it without messing up the team at all.
And technically play different ways with either a 3 or 4. Like he's got the pieces. Like what we mentioned when Tuca was around, and having all these players and only played the same way. He essentially is doing that by being stubborn and sticking to the only way that he feels could be successful based on his past. And that's where I have trouble with him, not rotating or selecting the players in a more contributory role.
Like, for example, we go in a lot of ways. I think part of his problem is that he might be tired. And it's like, man, if the guy's tired and you're making him go box to box all game, you've got pieces. You've got Carioca, you got Ayala. Those two guys can play that same position, and you're not gonna miss them a whole lot. So I think he's dialed in on certain players. He's not willing to change, and I think that's messing up the minutes the players get, and then contributes to injuries.
Yep. And so, like we mentioned, the injury to Florian. So now the question arises of Soteldo, is he now more valuable, and do we really sell him with this injury? Because we need the depth.
Well, word on the street is that they're pretty set on selling him because they're going to try to go after a European center back. That's still the last I heard from most of the press in Monterrey. But I mean, you're an injury or two away from being pretty depleted in certain areas if you're not careful. And so I think, there's some tough choices. The problem is Tigres in this bargaining position, they're at an inferior position because teams know that you have to get rid of a player before you can acquire another one. So anytime they try to buy a player, they're not going to try to pay you full price for a guy like Soteldo. So to me, it's not worth it to go and try to just give him away so we can have that extra foreign spot. That's something that should have been thought through in the offseason beforehand, and not now we're in a pinch or whatever. So in a lot of ways, I feel like, man, we've got the squad that we got. Let's just ride it out.
Ride it out. Yeah.
Ride out the team that we have, and then in the winter, let's make some moves.
Yeah, and the squad, like you've mentioned in past episodes, the squad is in need of a transition, and you got to make the transition to be gradual. And we got to plan ahead, man. Plan ahead, because you got to ride these last years of these guys. That's where I have the problem. Like, especially where I talked about Florian being a bust. we're riding out the last solid years of some players, and we need to take full advantage of that to be in the greatest position to win the championship and continue to add accolades.
And I think that was our week 1 rant, that in a lot of ways we feel like the front office is not looking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
They're not making moves to really rejuvenate the squad like we'd like. I think a lot of the moves they've made, they've kind of been in desperation. Lichnowsky is a perfect example. I think Lichnowsky was one of those guys we picked up and just because we were desperate, you know?
Yeah, and being reactive instead of proactive. Yeah. So it's interesting, but we're here. So next up, we got Atlas and playing without Gignac, now playing without Florian. So what do we expect to see? Who do we see playing to start?
I think Jordy's got to get the start there. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be Fulgencio on the left winger, right wing, Luis Quiñones, which I don't necessarily love Luis Quiñones on the right wing, but he's good enough to get it done. But yeah, Jordy Caicedo, I think will get the start probably at the 9 spot. And it'll be a good opportunity for him to, even though I saw Gignac riding his bike today. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what that dude takes, but he's like Superman. Yeah, he practiced also. I don't know how he does it. I got injured. I had a really similar injury back in college.
Yeah.
Like almost exactly the same thing happened. And it took me like 3 months to heal.
Yeah.
So wow. I don't know what this guy's taking, but it's just amazing. I mean, it's just a testament of how hard he works and all the effort he puts in. But personally, I think they should rest Gignac.
Absolutely.
Let Caicedo play. Atlas is not the defensive team that they were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
If you've noticed, every season since that first championship, they've gotten progressively worse on D. Mm-hmm. So they don't defend as well. And it's a good opportunity for Caicedo. Give those guys a shot. And I think it'll be a pretty competitive match.
And what I think that they're not going to be prepared for is the physical and ability and power of Jordy. Gignac is still, even though he's got, muscle to him, he's got some physical presence, he's still a player that drops out and, moves, has a lot of movement. I think Jordy Caicedo will be more of a bump, along the way with these defenders. And so I think that could be something that we could take advantage of. They're, like you mentioned, their defenders are not as quick or, as precise as they were in the past. So I think you're right. I think he starts, and then we go Fulgencio and Quiñones. I'm with that on the wings. So does Cordova come back, or do we go with Diente?
I'm thinking Cordova will get another shot. He's played well enough this season, I think, to get another shot. I think he's outperformed Diente at this point. I think he's done better. So I think he goes Diente. Cordova and not Carioca, Vigon as the 2 center mids,
and then Pizarro behind them.
Yeah. I think he's gonna stay with the same back 4. I don't think he'll change anything back there. I hear Loroña is still not ready to go, so we'll have to wait to see when he'll be available.
Yeah, I'm high on him. I think that he's going to be a really good addition.
I'm with you. I think defensively, he's just what we need.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be Aquino type where he's able to go all the way up the wing and make crosses, but that's not what I want from our right back. We've had Chaka in the past, and like I said, once Chaka gets to being fully healthy, we'll have that option. If we're in a game, we're down in a game, and we need offensive power, we can plug in Chaka. So that's the great benefit of bringing a guy who's a very defensive-minded right back.
Along with flipping over Aquino, along with playing Fulgencio back there, Garza can come in with a little more attacking-minded player. So I think that's kind of where we're headed. We were talking about where he can have multiple ways of playing. It's just being courageous enough to be a little different with what he's done in the past and not be stubborn with it.
I think that's part of the problem with Piojo is that once he gets to feel the pressure of the fans and everybody else that's pressuring him to win, he no longer functions.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer at his potential. You saw it a lot more that first season when he was still in that honeymoon period, and he was just like making moves. You see him plug in, youth players. He was doing all kinds of moves, and people were like clapping. They were excited. But once he feels the pinch, he becomes very conservative, almost like Tuca. I mean, you mentioned Tuca a couple of times, but I mean, it's just the way he becomes. And then he starts backlashing at the media, So I think he's doing all the things he did in that last season with America.
Yeah, it's so like almost immature, like, because he should be a lot more wiser and a lot more experienced handling those situations, because he knew what he was gonna get himself into. He was also at Monterrey back in the day, so he knows what the fans were like here or there in Monterrey. So shouldn't be surprised or shocked there. And there's no reason. It's like it almost shows that like he's more worried about what people are saying, fans wise and the press in Monterrey, than worried about his duties with the team.
He tends to make a lot of lazy, not well thought out comments. The whole Dani Alves thing rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, dude, don't make those comments. Like, don't burn any bridges. And then right after this last game with Carioca, they kept asking him about Carioca, and he said, well, I inherited an old team. Like,
yeah,
what do you want me to do? And it's like, dude, when you first came in, you were not worried about the age of the squad. You did not complain about it. You said your squad was full. You had everybody you needed. And now you just flipped it all the way around. Now you're saying these guys are old. You can't play with these guys. He's making all these insinuations, and it's just making the fans angrier. He's not helping himself at all.
Angry and antsy to not knowing what they're going to get out of their team.
Yep.
So what's your prediction? What do we feel against Atlas?
I think it'll be a low scoring one, man. I don't see it being good for us if it becomes a high scoring game. So I'm thinking it'll be a 2-1 Tigres.
And we're on the road, right? Just to make sure. Yeah, that's what I thought.
It'll be Saturday night at 9
p.m.
9 p.m.
That'll be nice. Cool, man. Well, thanks again for all your time and, always being down to record and talk about Tigres.
Thank you, Alonso. It's good being here, man. It's always good to put our thoughts from Twitter into video.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, thanks for everything, and enjoy the rest of your night.
You too.